They were out again today, but for the first time together. Ambulance workers and nurses united in their actions. This was Brighton, but it was a scene replicated across England.
This isn't about greed, this is about survival, and this is about the protection of the NHS, which we treasure.
Emma Sharp left the NHS 3 months ago, unable to cope with the stress, but she was back today to support her former colleagues.
The only way to draw people back in is to provide the funding, make the services better so that the stress is less.
NHS leaders have warned that this will be the most disruptive week of strikes, with more action by the nurses tomorrow, physiotherapists on Thursday and some ambulance staff on Friday.
The government had been hoping that public support for the striking paramedics and nurses would have waned by now, but that does not seem to be happening. You can hear the toots as the cars go by. And at the same time, the offers from Wales and Scotland has left the UK government increasingly isolated.
In Scotland, strike action is on hold following a government offer, and in Wales, all unions except Unite suspended action following an offer from the Welsh government.
I think we are tantalisingly close. That is the thing. We are very, very close to getting a deal. And the issue is around about how the deal has been made up. It's an extra 3%, but only 1.5% goes on wages. The other 1.5% is consolidated. It is non-consolidated.
There are no talks taking place in England, so this couple, both paediatric nurses, knew that today's strike was inevitable.
For me, I don't see another route to indicate to the government just how serious they need to take nursing and the patients we care for. So this is not a decision that anyone will have come to lightly. Certainly as a nurse, it's a tricky decision to make, and it's a tricky balance to withdraw your labour against making sure that we're safely staffed.
Jodie, you're currently on maternity leave and you're looking at going back. What are you thinking about?
I'm sort of torn in half. I'm excited to go back and see my colleagues and sort of support them as best as I can, and just be giving something back again. But I'm also just slightly anxious because you just know what you're walking back into at the moment.
The job has had quite an impact on me, and I have had times when I've thought, oh, do I want to continue doing this? Could I go and earn a better wage? Could I take my skill set and go and do something else? I probably think I could, but I don't want to give up yet.
Sunday afternoon playtime with the children is a world away from the ward, but routinely now Charlie is called in or has to stay late to cover staff shortages. In another hospital this morning, the health secretary, however, held out little hope for negotiations on this year's pay deal.
It's right that we have an independent process. We accepted in full the recommendations last year. We're now submitting evidence to the pay review body for April and onwards. We want to work constructively with the trade unions in terms of that evidence, and that's why we've been discussing these issues with them.
Charlie Rummery was briefly on the picket line this morning, but he had to leave because there weren't, once again, enough staff in the paediatric emergency department. He will be back tomorrow.
Victoria MacDonald there. And as you heard in Victoria's report, most strikes in Wales were called off today, although one by Unite members working for the ambulance service did go ahead. And although pay is central to the dispute, for many ambulance staff across the UK, it's also about the pressure they face as demand increasingly exceeds their capacity to respond. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Andy Davies, spent several days with the Welsh ambulance service.
Ambulance service, what's the full address of the emergency?
Every day, more than 1,000 emergency calls come through on average to the Welsh ambulance service. To call handlers like Dan Allen Boyland, once with the Household Cavalry, now speaking to a mother whose 1-year-old child is unconscious.
Right, is she still unconscious? She's gone floppy now, is she? Right, OK, so lay her flat on her back on the ground and remove anything from under her head. So put your mouth over her mouth and nose, OK? We're going to blow 2 regular breaths into her lungs, about 1 second each, just enough to make the chest rise, OK?
He begins to guide her through CPR, and gradually the child regains consciousness.
Was I laughing? Yeah, that's a lot better, OK.
What are these calls like when you're dealing with something like that?
It can be nerve-wracking. You've got to try and hide those emotions though. But lucky with those 2 breaths in her lungs, she recovered and woke up. Still pale and well. Ambulance service, what's the address of the emergency?
Are you bleeding or vomiting blood?
And she fell, did she?
Okay, is she changing colour?
What was it, amber one?
Yeah, an amber one.
It has been relentless of late. December in Wales saw the highest number of immediately life-threatening red calls on record.
999 activated.
It coincided with record delays for ambulances stuck queuing outside hospitals. And when it came to amber calls, which includes suspected strokes, the average ambulance response time was almost 3.5 hours.
It will take us anywhere up to 2 hours from that first call for us to get to you.
Approximately 50 minutes.
1 hour, 45 minutes.
Up to 2 hours for the help to arrive.
What's it been like when you've had to say to people you can't send an ambulance?
I always get, every time I get a call, I always get nervous when I know that's coming up.
Especially when the backlash at times can be brutal. Abby Williams, one of the call handlers here, is 27.
You know, I've been told many times in graphic ways how I'll be murdered. You know, they'll say, I hope you crash on the way home. I hope you never make it back to your family tonight. I hope your family gets in this position and no one sends you an ambulance. It's just anger. It's just, it hurts and it's upsetting. And we drive home, you know, and those words go round in our minds whilst we fall asleep. But we've just got to remember they're just scared. I don't know why I'm getting so, like, just about the abuse. It's so, like...
But, I mean, it does affect you.
Yeah.
If you wait while I'll get them to have a look. Over.
How do you feel about the fact that people desperate for help often aren't getting an ambulance in the time that they need?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's not nice. And the first thing we are constantly saying to our patients is, I'm sorry for the delay.
We spend a day with Suzanne and John Wallace, a married couple who crew together.
I just need to finish some of the paperwork now.
Few delays for them on this shift, not what they're used to.
So this is quite unusual for us now, so the calls come in. Because the calls come in 5 minutes ago, this is a pretty rapid response for this type of call. I've been to a patient 17 hours. Waiting.
Ambulance service, what's the address of the emergency?
Yeah, it's my son. I'm going to go there now. He's got a job to breathe.
Last July, as hospital handover delays reached new levels, Nicola Simmons needed an ambulance. It was for her son Daniel, a 32-year-old chemist with Welsh Water, who'd called her from his home near Ebervale.
And all he could say was, come over, just 2 words, really breathless.
She called 999. They said they'd call him directly. Daniel was alone at home when Nicola got there 30 minutes later.
He was gasping for breath. He was freezing. He was sweating. He had a job to keep his eyes open. I said, as the ambulance contacted you, I said, how long are they going to be? And all he could say was, he went, 3 hours.
They told him it's going to be 3 hours, but he can't wait 3 hours.
Nicola, increasingly desperate, called 999 again.
He is pale, yeah, he's sweating.
With an ambulance still 3 hours away, she was asked if she herself could drive Daniel to the nearest hospital. On their way there, he stopped breathing. Nicola and then her partner, by the side of a busy road, tried frantically to resuscitate Daniel, but couldn't.
I was trying to breathe into his mouth and pump his chest, and I didn't even know how to do it myself, but I was screaming, Daniel, don't die. And he'd gone. I'm so mad I am. Where's my boy? In a box, stuck in a box. Stuck in a box in my living room. And he should be here. I mean, I'm not very clever with things like that, you know, but when somebody needs an ambulance, they meant to be there. They meant to come out.
The Welsh Ambulance Service are reviewing this case, and an inquest will be held in May. But Nicola joins so many others now left to ponder what might have happened had an ambulance arrived sooner.
So does this condition present an immediate threat to life?
Okay, try and keep her as warm as you can until the crews get there, okay?
In the call centre, the delays weigh heavily on those trying to send help.
The calls that we deal with, we'll remember them. We'll remember every last thing you said to us, and the emotions that you showed, we carry that. And I think people don't realise that. And you just so desperately want to go and help them.
Oh, there's blanket for me.
Pressures do appear to be easing. Response times for amber calls like this one to an elderly man with a head injury are much improved since the new year. There are more paramedics, more qualified to offer patients alternatives to hospital, more remote clinical assessments from an ambulance service at times overwhelmed. If you have another year now like you had last year?
I don't know whether everyone can sustain that. I don't know if people would want to stay in a job that is seeing them sat outside hospitals.
So your hopes for the next year?
Things change, that pressures are relieved, that offload times are better, that we get into the public in a quicker, better response than what we have been, and that the government ultimately help with all that, you know.
Yet politics provides a fractious backdrop. Industrial disputes remain unresolved. An ever more fragile-looking health service limps through yet another winter. The strain on its workforce and those who depend upon it painfully clear.